Frequently here on Harvest, we've run stories about the concerns over Iran's nuclear program. From government officials to Brian Bush's Israel up-to-the-minute reports, we've kept you abreast of that situation. But oftentimes we wonder, what can ordinary citizens do? Well, Nathan Carleton is the communications director for a group United Against Nuclear Iran, now in its 5th year of existence. Nathan joins us today on Harvest, and let me hit you with that first question right away, because most people say, well, I know I can pray, but what else can I do to help this situation?
Well, anyone can make a difference in pressuring the regime in Iran that's now trying to develop nuclear weapons. And the way to do that is to put pressure on companies around the world that are still doing business in Iran. This is a critical time right now because the regime is pursuing nuclear weapons, and fortunately, America and some of its allies are imposing sanctions on Iran that are affecting the economy. Fortunately, some companies continue to do business there, and so our organization really tries to put pressure on those companies to leave.
I think a lot of people would be shocked at how many U.S. companies actually do business with Iran.
There aren't a lot of U.S. companies that do business in Iran. A few have been able to through foreign subsidiaries, but the real problem that we have is with companies like a car company like Nissan that openly sells cars in America, has contracts with the U.S. government's receiving tax money, and at the same time they're producing and selling cars in Iran at the same time. We're really trying to make these companies make a choice. Do you want to do business with the Iranian regime, or do you want to do business with the American people?
Now, it is a difficult tightrope. We were just kind of chatting off camera. You know, how do you show solidarity with the people of Iran? Sure. Obviously, you know, there's great discontent there with their government.
Sure.
You know, so some, you know, companies may say, well, we just want them to have a, you know, a nice made microwave oven, you know.
Right.
So how do you kind of balance those two things?
Well, we, you know, absolutely support the people of Iran. Part of our organization's goal is to liberate those people from the regime that oppresses them and takes advantage of them. There's a difference in a company that says it's selling, you know, food to the Iranian people or medical supplies. That's not something we're so concerned about. Our concern is with companies that are just making profits because they see Iran as a market that they can make money off of. The companies we're targeting are earning profits from their business in Iran. It's not some humanitarian
effort or anything like that.
Endeavor. And the biggest problem is, like a company I mentioned, Nissan. To do business in Iran, they have to work with an Iranian car manufacturer. This one's called Pars Khodro. Pars Khodro is indirectly controlled by the IRGC, which is the Iranian military. Some of these car companies have had their vehicles used by Iran's military to transport missiles. We've dealt with crane companies that their cranes are being used to hang Iranian citizens, and we're telling these companies it's impossible to do some clean business in Iran that helps the people. If you're doing business in Iran, you're paying money to the regime, and you're also working with companies that are controlled by the IRGC, and you're helping their nuclear program. You're helping to fund terrorists around the world as well.
There's plenty of people out there who have their doubts about the success of economic sanctions. Why do you think they'll work in this case? You
know, they really have worked so far. Maybe a couple of years ago, I would hear people saying sanctions will never work. Fortunately, the U.S. and its allies, to their credit, have gotten really serious. They've banned oil imports from Iran. They've barred Iran from the international banking system. And if you look at the economic data, the regime is really hurting. They are complaining about these sanctions. They're having trouble doing business. Their currency, the rial, is in free fall. Their car production is down thanks to some companies that are pulling out of Iran. These sanctions really are working. Unfortunately, they're probably not enough, and they need to be toughened and tightened. But before we talk about some last resort, you know, military action or something like that, it's just common sense that we need to do everything we possibly can to pressure the regime, and hopefully they'll see that it's not in their interest to stay on this course, and they'll change.
You know, obviously there's a lot of people who are worried about a nuclear Iran, so to speak, if they had a weapon, but I think there's also a handful of people who aren't so convinced. You know, what is the future of this program?
Are you saying that they might think that...
Some people think that, I've seen plenty of headlines that say that the information that they are pursuing a weapon is bogus.
I would really question that. There was a discussion in the intelligence community about whether Iran was pursuing a weapon versus a nuclear program. I hope none of the viewers here would hear that discussion and think there's no threat. That is a specific intelligence issue that between the military and the CIA. However, there's no doubt whatsoever that Iran has bad intentions. They're enriching uranium. They're producing uranium at levels much higher than any country would need for power or anything like that. There's no one that thinks they just want some nuclear power for themselves. They clearly want to have a nuclear program that they can use to threaten the world.
Now, I can picture viewers at home saying, okay, Nathan, I agree with you. I agree that Iran's getting close to a nuclear weapon. I agree we should do something about it. And I'm sitting here in my house, and you tell me I can pressure companies. But what am I supposed to do? Pick up the phone and call Nissan? How do I go about that?
You could do that. I'd encourage people to go to our website. It's just UANI.com. We've pressured these companies, have people write letters, send emails to these companies, and we've had a lot of success. 1 week ago today, Fiat, the Italian car manufacturer that was doing just open business in Iran, announced that they would leave Iran. They saw, I believe, that this wasn't good for their name and reputation to be working with a type of regime that controls Iran. I would encourage Americans to call their local representatives and say, you should pass tough laws that will say that any company that does business in Iran should not be receiving my tax money. If these laws are passed, they can be passed at the local level, not necessarily Washington, D.C. One was passed here in Indiana in March. And these companies will be forced to make a choice. And when they make a choice, they'll choose the non-Iranian tax dollars, and the Iranian regime will suffer. And again, I said I hope they would change course if the pressure continues.
Why just Iran? I mean, there's a lot of bad actors out there.
There are, and we're not saying Iran is the only bad country, but our organization is specifically devoted to Iran because it is the greatest threat to the world's security. This is the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. This is a regime that's killed U.S. and NATO troops on the battlefields of Iraq and Afghanistan. And worse, such an unstable, threatening regime is now pursuing a nuclear weapon. That is an incredibly serious matter, and whatever needs to be done to stop that has to be done.
Of course, one of the great concerns is whether or not Israel would take, kind of unilateral action against Iran. Obviously, they're in the closest proximity. The greatest threat would be, a strike on Israel over, of course, Europe or the United States. Where do you guys stand as far as what Israel might or might not do?
Well, what we want as an organization is to avoid something like that from happening. Like I said, whatever has to be done to stop Iran has to be done. We cannot allow them to have nuclear weapons. But before we get into something like that would obviously be very serious and have consequences, we need to use everything in our disposal to economically pressure them. Even if you don't think this will work, it's at least worth a try.
We've only got about 30 seconds left, but would a change in regime, Ahmadinejad being eliminated from the picture, would that change the picture in Iran?
Well, the sad thing is that anyone who closely follows this knows that Ahmadinejad doesn't have the most power in Iran. There is a very brutal, dangerous regime that controls that country, and something monumental needs to be done to really make a change there.
Well, Nathan, we appreciate you educating our viewers on this and helping fill us in on the situation. It sounds like a very peaceful way that viewers can help try to change the situation over there. Their website is UANI.com. If you can't remember that, all you have to do is remember our website, which is harvest-tv.com.